A long time ago, ever since Americans were fighting for independence from Britain, there were these disturbing cases of human bodies that were found all deformed and misshapen. Victims' arms were bending in impossible ways, and their heads were twisted 180 degrees. The spines were broken so that the torso had more flexibility, meaning most of the bodies found were folded up like laundry. People noticed a pattern in each of the bodies that were found, helping them connect all the murders. But they still didn't know who it was that was committing them. The murders stopped for years upon years after 1787. The second murder spree beginning in 1883 and ending in 1913. These sets of bodies were the same as the first, misshapen and deformed. Except something new was added. In the face of every female and child, the bottom jaw was ripped off and nailed back onto the face. The eyes were ripped out, and fake ones were added. And lastly, the victims would hang from a tree by their wrists from some string, just like a puppet. There was no preference on who got killed. Nobody had yet seen the killer, except for the victims, and none of them escaped. The killings happened all across America, at different times of the year. A total of 57 mangled bodies were found, striking fear in Americans as the First War began. The series of murders stopped for 30 years before another body was found. In 1943, two hunters were out in the woods when they found a body hanging from the branches of a tree in front of them. When they looked at what was making him hang, they noticed it wasn't string, or rope, or even cloth, but instead it was the man's intestines. When they saw what they saw, the two men reported it to the police. 2 days later, the police found the bodies of both hunters sitting at the table, with tea party equipment out, and an uncut birthday cake which read, "Join the party," on top in red frosting. Both hunters were dead. Not only were their faces messed up, and their bodies too, but they were smiling. Both of the men had a smile cut into their faces. As police tried to investigate the murders, the nickname Puppet Man was put to label the serial killer, since all his victims seemed to be made into puppets in some form or another. In Colorado a year later, an entire first-grade classroom was found dead, including the teacher. The bodies were in a position that would be normal if they were alive. The teacher was standing in front of the class of dead children, with her finger pointing at the whiteboard to a sentence saying, "Witness my art," in red marker. The teacher's eyes were gouged out without any fake ones replacing them, and all the children had their eyes removed as well. There was no blood in the classroom. It was spotless. After officials reported this gruesome scene, a countrywide manhunt ensued. Every police officer in the country of America knew about the Puppet Man and was looking for him. This manhunt lasted 2.5 years, and as more and more people joined the search, more and more people started to die. The number of bodies that were found mutilated by the Puppet Man hit record numbers during the manhunt, and in the course of 2.5 years, 357 bodies were found. Nobody could find the person who was killing these people so gruesomely, and after the 357th kill, the murders stopped. 60 years went by before the puppet man returned. People thought he was already dead. It had been so long since the last murder by the puppet man that people thought somebody was copying him. In 2004, somebody finally saw the puppet man. A 27-year-old man was going camping with his brother in New Jersey when they heard a scream in the woods, not too far off from where they were camping. His brother went to investigate, but didn't return. After 25 minutes of silence, the 27-year-old man decided to look outside his tent to see if his brother was okay, but instead found a 7-foot-tall creature ripping out his brother's intestines by the campfire. The puppet man had his back turned against the camper while he proceeded to tie his brother's wrists up with his organs. It wasn't until the 27-year-old man snapped a twig with his knee did the puppet man notice him. When the twig snapped, the puppet man jolted to a stop and slowly turned his head 180 degrees like an owl and looked down at the man. He then smiled at him, exposing 2 rows of long razor-sharp teeth. His mouth was completely bloody, and there were pieces of flesh stuck between his teeth. He continued to rip out his brother's organs as he stared into the man's eyes. As much as he tried to move, he was frozen and stuck looking at the puppet man, as if the puppet man froze his body in place with his gaze. After 2 minutes, he finally worked up the courage and spoke out of his mouth. "What are you? What do you want from me?" The puppet man then completely turned around with his brother hanging from his hands and started making his dead brother dance like a puppet on strings. And when he begged him to stop and put his brother down, the puppet man then hung his brother to a tree and picked up the frightened young man and told him in a low, raspy voice,
"Smile more."
Then proceeded to smile at him while setting him down onto his feet. The puppet man let that one man live to tell the people of the world that he exists. Except 2 months later, he was deemed insane and put on trial for the murder of his own brother. The puppet man has yet to kill again. But when he does come back, he's coming for the ones who don't believe in him.